What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, we're going to go through my watch list for game week 29 and beyond. Obviously, we're in an important stage of the season, right? 29 is a double, 30 is another blank, and game week 31 to 38 is the final stretch. And one of the key teams is going to be Leicester. And one of the reasons for that is they've got a lot of games to rearrange, okay? So they've got Everton away, Norwich at home, and Chelsea away still to play. And the fact that none of these doubles are before game week 30 means that from 31 to 37, bearing in mind they shouldn't schedule like a double for game week 38. So from 31 to 37, they're going to have 9 fixtures in the space of 6 game weeks. So they're quite an important team. The problem is trying to find someone that is not only nailed on, but likely to play kind of back-to-back minutes in those double game weeks. It's all well and good having extra fixtures, but if you don't play, they don't matter. And I had a look at Harvey Barnes in particular, and recently he's played against Leeds and Burnley, didn't play against Wolves, did play against West Ham, didn't play against Liverpool, and then before that he kind of wasn't even in the squad and wasn't getting on the pitch. Now I did look at Transfer Market and they just had him down for City and Liverpool as not in the squad, so I'm not sure if he's injured, because usually if it's an injury they put it down, so maybe it was a knock and they didn't have the information. Obviously these games are the games that have been rearranged, and then he has come back and kind of had a bit part to play in some of the fixtures, but the last couple he's played 90 minutes. The problem is, it's a bit like Maddison. Will that continue on for the future? I think the upcoming fixture on Arsenal away and Man United away is not necessarily great, but as we saw again, Man United against City, not defending fantastically well, and obviously they do play in game week 30 for Brentford at home, which is a pretty nice fixture to have there. And then the rest of the fixture run is kind of okay, especially when you add in those rearranged fixtures. And for 6.5 million, it's a pretty good price for Barnes. And obviously the other player that people will be looking at is Maddison. Now, Maddison has a bit of a knock at the moment, and at least that's why he didn't play in the last game. If he obviously is fit, he could play as well. I still see kind of Harvey Barnes as more likely to get a goal and Maddison more likely to get an assist. Obviously, minutes is a big concern. If Maddison plays more than Barnes, then you don't really worry about that. But if they were to get equal minutes from now until the end of the season, I do slightly favour Harvey Barnes, but not necessarily by a huge amount. So if Maddison was fit, I would definitely consider him. The other kind of player just to talk about is obviously Jamie Vardy. Now, for me, he's been out for quite a while. He only managed 60 minutes in the last game. I don't think he had any shots or any shots on target. I did think he looked fairly sharp. But is he, when his minutes are fine, for 10.3 million, whatever price he is he going to play back-to-back in the double game weeks? And the other problem with Leicester is their best shot, potentially, of getting back into Europe next year could be to win the European competition they're in. So if they go far in that competition, obviously we'll see as we go how far through they get. Are they going to play like full-strength squads in the Premier League? They might rotate a little bit more. So on paper, I really like Barnes as an option, and I have put him on the watch list, and I will keep an eye on Maddison as well. I think Vardy's just too expensive, and I would always have concerns in a double game week that he might not play back-to-back fixtures, especially if there's Europe, especially if Daka or Iheanacho possibly could play instead. But Barnes and Maddison I would definitely keep an eye on, because I think in the midfield bracket, I could be looking to move to kind of like a 3-5-2 at some point soon. So you have that kind of extra spot. I've got Ramsey in my team, for example, and I could look to upgrade. It all just comes down to at what point do you get them, because they could fund a different move, right? If I downgraded like Son to Barnes and upgraded like a forward to Kane, that's a move that I could do. But do I want them for Arsenal away and Man United away? I'm not quite sure I do, but the fact they play in 30 is obviously pretty decent. So I do like the look of Barnes and Maddison's. I've just got big concerns over minutes, especially with Europe. If you're a Leicester fan, let me know below what you think. So I might make a defensive transfer this week, and one of the reasons is just to get a player with an extra fixture, right? So I'm very cautious about taking too many players out ahead of game week 30, but if I can do it for a player that also plays in 30 and has an extra fixture in 29, which Spurs do, then that might be worth it, right? So I won't go into my team too much. I'll try and do some of the videos obviously at the end of the week once game week 28 is finished, but we're just gonna have to get a few out before then, because there's just not going to be enough time to delay all of them. But like, for example, Jimenez, big issue. If he doesn't start against Watford, I'm really concerned about him starting against Everton in 29. So rather than sell him before game week 30, where he could play against Leeds, I might bench him. And instead of having Luca Dean or Saiss, I could sell them for a Spurs defender. And let's not forget, the Spurs do play in 30. like Sice, like Luca Dean, but he also have an extra fixture in 29. Now, I know the Spurs double game week is not fantastic. Man United away, Brighton away. Are they going to get a clean sheet in either game? I would say it's tricky for them to get a clean sheet there. And obviously West Ham at home is not easy either. But I think it's almost like taking a gamble that they do get something over these games. And then they do have a pretty good fixture run. And kind of one thing to say is I'm not getting these players in thinking that they can take the spot of James or Trent or Cancelo. They would be in for a purpose, right? A game in 30, a double game week in 29, and then probably be more of a squad player when Spurs have their games to rearrange, like Arsenal at home. So when they've got another double game week or when they've got a good fixture, I could bring them in, but most of the time I would be benching them, right? They would just be like a squad player. So it's whether or not they're worth that. Just some thoughts around Spurs defense and Spurs in general. I'm a little bit worried about how Conte keeps talking about the club and what he's done and the players and how they're playing and what they should be doing and how he's good enough to be managing better players or whatever it might be. There's a lot of like negativity, and I think sometimes managers do that to kind of drive their players to get them motivated, but it doesn't necessarily work with all players. So that does worry me a little bit. On the other hand, I do think Spurs are a bit like Man United in that they do have a squad that is probably better than they've been playing, especially from like a defensive point of view. And again, I'm not sitting here saying that Spurs or Man United are anywhere near Man City or Liverpool or Chelsea's level, because I don't think they are. Right? They're far, far away from it. But I do think they can play better than they have done. So I think when the fixtures are good, they are a good team to kind of back. So that's why I'm looking at them. It's not like some super exciting move, but it does get me an extra fixture this week and a fixture still in 30 and good fixtures long term. And also it takes a bit of money out of my defence because Sice and Luca Dean are both over 5 million. We'll have to wait and see what happens in 28. In terms, really quickly, of the player options, I think Doherty's a bit of a nostalgia pick. There is a part of me that's tempted because he's been starting a lot recently, and if he starts again against Everton tonight, then I would strongly consider him. If he doesn't, though, then that just tells him what I already think, that all the wing-backs are just way too hit and miss in terms of whether they're going to start. I'd love Sessegnon at 4.3 or Doherty at 4.7 or even Reguilon or Emerson Royale to be options. I'm just not sure it's going to be the case, right? Doherty's good going forward, but they might put Emerson Royale in for games where they need a bit more defensive stability. So it's hard to call what's going to happen. So I think as much as I'd love to go for the Doherty dream again, right? He was brilliant as a wing back at Wolves. I'm just not sure his place is nailed enough. So that leaves a centre back. Obviously, Romero's an option as well. But Davies and Dyer look also pretty nailed. And they're also a bit cheaper as well. In my mind, I still see Dyer as a little bit more nailed than Davies. I don't know why. I just always feel like Davies could get rotated at some point. But those three centre-backs seem to be playing pretty regularly. And Davies for 4.4 million, bombing up from left centre-back, right, in open play, not even worrying about waiting for a corner or a free kick like Dyer. He is getting forward, and he does deliver a pretty good cross as well. So either of those two players are kind of in the back of my mind. A lot's going to happen this week in terms of transfer plans, like because I don't have that wild card like a lot of people now. It feels like every decision is a little bit tougher to make. So if I bring this in, what does that mean for the future? But ultimately, some of my goals are to get some money out of my defence, out of the Luca Dean and Sice positions, and maybe to get some money out of my forward line as well. And one of these players could do it. They've got the double, they've got the game week 30. I'm thinking about it. I don't know how excited I am about it, but I am thinking about it. So before we talk about some cheap forwards that I've put on the watch list, let's just talk about why, okay? So in my team, I've got Rao Jimenez, and he has now not started the last two games. So he didn't start against Crystal Palace. He didn't start against West Ham. He did get a few more minutes against Crystal Palace. We don't need to kind of knee-jerk or worry about it right now. We can see what happens in the Watford game. In the back of my mind, I'm a little bit surprised this has happened. I know they've got a lot of other attackers, and I know Jimenez hasn't been fantastic, but they also haven't played very well without him either. So I feel like they need to change something, but it has to include him in the side. So if he plays against Watford, I don't necessarily think he's in a kind of a rush to get rid of, because he's got Everton and then Leeds at home in game week 30. If he doesn't play against Watford, then we need to start looking at replacements. And some of you are probably looking at kind of cheaper forwards anyway. And we discussed it on the stream last night, and a lot of my suggestions got laughed at. But let's be honest, there are no good 7.5 to 8 million or below forwards. And when I say no good ones, I mean no one that's really standing out right now that is not without their their problems. And you can't just say buy Harry Kane because he's a lot more money, and that requires a whole different conversation about how to kind of spread your funds. So if I just look at the list of other players that aren't listed here, Chris Wood barely having any shots, hasn't scored a goal, I don't think, for Newcastle yet. Watkins and Ings possibly options. They do play in Game Week 30. Fixture run's not fantastic. Are they both absolutely nailed to start every single game? I don't know. So Maximin obviously had a knock recently. Long-term Newcastle fixtures not great. Che Adams, well, I've already got Broya. Do I really want to double up on Southampton attack? Weghorst is probably the one that I don't have listed here that I genuinely think is a good option, right? And we can laugh that he just blanked in the double. The week before he got a 12-pointer and obviously came away with 14 in total. Burnley also have pretty good fixtures and they got games to rearrange. I just think if you were taking out Jimenez in Game Week 29, is it the right time to buy Weghorst, who has, I think it's Brentford in 29 and then a blank in Game Week 30? So it's not necessarily ideal for minutes in 29 and 30. So that's why he's not on the list. But I do think longer term, he's probably one of the best options. So it's all going to come down to future transfer plans and when do you actually bring those players in. And I'm just not sure this week is the time for Weghorst. King didn't even play the last game. Dennis, I think he scored like 1 goal in the last like 6, 7, 8 fixtures. I just don't really trust Watford attack. Although again, their fixtures from 31 onwards are quite good. And they might have a double game week at one point where not a lot of other players do. So I would consider going for them again. But right now, these are probably the 3. And I get it. They're not great. They're not great at all. But if we're going for like swaps, this is all really the options that we have. Obviously, instead of Calvert-Lewin, you could look at Richarlison as well. Really quick point before I talk about these 3. One thing that I'm considering, because I've used my bench boost, is I'm thinking about completely just tanking the forward spot, like one of my forward spots. So instead of having 3 playing forwards, I might just have 2. And just put in like a 4.5 and just spread that money into midfield or defence. I think I've got Trent. At some point, I might want to get Cancelo back. Reece James obviously looks great. I could go for Robertson or Rudiger and kind of play 4 at the back most weeks. I need money for that. So Jimenez to a 4.5 million forward is not completely out of the question. If I go like for like, these are probably the 3. Antonio, not been great for a very long time. I do think West Ham are starting to kind of tire maybe a little bit. They haven't got any January replacements either. But he has been reliable-ish at times, and the fixtures are okay from kind of Game Week 30 onwards. So I haven't completely discounted him. I think Calvert-Lewin is very interesting to me because I still think deep down we've got a quality player there. We just need to see some fitness. The problem is if he doesn't start against Spurs tonight, then you're probably not going to buy him ahead of a double game week where he probably won't play back-to-back, or he might not play back-to-back. We'd have to see what Lampard says. But the thing with Everton, a bit like Burnley, they've got fixtures to rearrange, plenty of double game weeks to come. I'd love to have their main striker, who's still got decent stats, is probably still on penalties. He could be an option. Richarlison is the other option, but I think if I could, I'd rather have Calvert-Lewin. And then you've got Tony as well. Obviously just scored a hat-trick. It's not really a knee-jerk. I mentioned Brentford's fixtures a few weeks ago. But I just think it's maybe... This is the main problem with bringing in a forward right now. Okay, so Burnley at home is good. Leicester away ain't bad. Chelsea's not great. West Ham's okay. So the fixture run's all right. But I feel like you kind of want him for these 2. And then from this fixture onwards, you probably want Weghorst or maybe even Dennis, right? This is how bad the options are instead. Because I think you go into kind of Spurs, Man United and you're not too sure. The last 3 fixtures are good. You can't see them because it won't let me scroll down. But Southampton, Everton and Leeds. But before that, I feel like Tony's just really for the next 2 weeks and then you'd probably want to ship him again. So the ideal situation for Jimenez, I think, is just that he plays against Watford and we just keep him in our teams and hope that he can actually score a goal some point soon, because the cheap forward options are just not good. So let me know below what you think of the cheap forwards in general. Who would you bring in? And would you completely tank one of the spots so you just put a 4.5 in there? Let me know in the comments below. If you did enjoy the video, please do give it a like. Hit that subscribe button if you're new around here, and I'll catch you again tomorrow for another video.